It's 23 minutes to 3. It's Louise Hulland on the afternoon show. Welcome along. Now, there's one story which has stopped us all in our tracks this week. The reaction to ITV's drama about the post office scandal. Now, while the power of the arts brought this story to millions of people, the work of dogged journalism and determined reporters refusing to give up on the story was actually what exposed this miscarriage of justice. One of those amazing reporters was Nick Wallis. He's been covering this story since 2011. And for the sake of transparency, he is a friend of mine, but I am delighted that he's given up some time to natter with us today. Nick, goodness me, I'm so proud of you. What has this last week been for you?
Hi, Louise. It's been amazing. I mean, for the sake of transparency, I also ought to say that I was a consultant on the drama, so I'm biased in my appreciation of it.
Well, I was going to ask you about this because thank goodness that people like the ITV producers actually have the sense to call people like you to say, can we get this right?
Yeah, it was actually quite an inspiring process. I was approached by a lady called Natasha Bondi, who works for Little Gem Productions, which is a factual production company which makes television programmes. And she was immediately taken by the horror of this story and wanted to find out more with a view to doing a documentary about it. And then one night, I think she was lying in bed and suddenly thought, hang on a minute, this would be a great drama. But there was a problem because Little Gem Productions hadn't made any dramas. So she went to ITV Studios because she knew Patrick Spence, who is a seasoned drama producer with awards coming out of his ears. And she pitched it to him. He loved it immediately. And because of the relationship that ITV Studios have with the ITV channel, they were able to knock on the door of the head of drama there and say, we think this would make a good drama. And that was back in 2020.
So this has been brewing for so long, hasn't it? I know there's been loads of comments from people saying, why does it take a drama to get this, the attention that it deserves? But actually, sometimes the facts of a story are so upsetting that you almost need it to look like fiction before it can hit through because the reality is just so traumatic.
Well, we are creatures who understand information through stories, and journalists tell narrative stories whilst laced with facts, but sometimes we need to connect with the story through its emotional resonance. And that is what this drama did. I was a mere fact carrier. I was there to provide documents, contacts, information that may be peripheral about characters, etc., and inform them as to various plot points or potential plot points within the story that they may not have considered. But then the dramatists, the writer Gwyn Hughes, Patrick Spence, Natasha, the amazing cast, the phenomenal director James Strong, constructed and weaved together a lot of individual stories. They had to make you care about the characters, to understand their situation, then weave it together into a wider narrative, which kept you compelled over a period of 4 episodes to actually make this drama land. So a huge amount of things could have gone wrong. But the fundamental thing that Natasha said to me when she wanted to do this, she said, we want this to be absolutely as faithfully accurate as we can possibly make it to the truth of what happened, the information in the public domain, the transcripts, etc., the judgments, but also we want to make the truth of the sub-postmasters story accurate as well. And I think that's what they managed to achieve. They managed to deliver both. And I think that's why it just landed with the public.
So take us back. How did you first hear about this story and when was it? I am sure we've been talking about this for a very long time.
Yeah, I was working as the breakfast show presenter in BBC local radio at BBC Surrey, and we got a tweet. I looked after the Twitter feed, which I had set up for BBC Surrey when I moved
because we all have to do everything.
Well, exactly. And I was jealously proud of it because I kept telling people at the time, I said, this Twitter thing, it's going to be big. We need to get on it. It's a great way of communicating with the audience. And so I used to sort of jealously look at it when I was presenting my program to see if we'd got any new followers. And a tweet came through while I was on air from a company called Surrey Cars saying, could they pitch for the BBC Surrey taxi account? Now, I don't know about your radio station, but the BBC Surrey definitely did not have a taxi account.
Indeed.
And if we did, I would have just forwarded the tweet to management and thought no more about it. But because we didn't, I thought, oh, well, I'll have a bit of fun with this chap. And I said, oh, well, that depends whether or not your drivers have got any great stories that they'll come on air and tell us. And I got another tweet back saying, I've got a story, all right. Give me a call after the show.
Wow.
So I thought, ooh, okay. And that person was Devinder Misra and his pregnant wife, Seema, the former sub-postmaster at West Byfleet Post Office, he said had been thrown in prison for a crime she didn't commit. And I thought, well, this is interesting. And I mean, poor old Devinder was all over the place. He was crying. He was raging against the injustice of what had happened. But in that conversation, he told me about Computer Weekly's amazing investigation, which had been done in 2009, the previous year, and the formation of an organisation called the Justice for Sub-Postmasters Alliance, led by one Alan Bates. So within the hour, I was talking to Alan Bates, and he was telling me that this wasn't just happening to Seema Misra, it was happening all over the country.
So then what happened?
Well, I took it to my boss, all excited, and she said, well, calm yourself, hold your horses. We're dealing with people who've been convicted of crimes by a jury at a Crown Court. We can't just go and putting them on air and telling their stories. We need to check this out properly. So she pointed me in the direction of Jane French, who was a fearsome editor down at BBC South who did the TV programme Inside Out South. Mm-hmm. And I wrote a pitch for her, and I didn't know Jane. She didn't know me. I had no idea whether she would be interested or if she would respond. And within 24 hours, I got an email back saying, this sounds interesting. I'll put my two best producers on it, and if it checks out, then you can present the programme.
And can I interject?
February 2011.
I was going to say, for people that have obviously never worked in telly, that is incredibly rare.
Yeah, oh gosh, yes. I think I ought to make that point. Yeah, I was not expecting any response, let alone one that would come back in 24 hours. And we did our first investigation on air on BBC Surrey and on BBC Inside Out South, so radio and television, on the 7th of February 2011. And I'm pathetically proud to say it's the first English language broadcast journalism on the subject that was broadcast in the UK, but there was a Welsh language documentary that also went out in 2009, which looked at Noel Thomas and Joe Hamilton as well.
I remember a few years after that seeing a post from you on LinkedIn and Twitter saying, I'm crowdfunding. I need to be at this event. I'm a freelance journalist. I need you to help me cover this story that is incredibly important. And I remember it because for many, many journalists, there is always one story that gets under your skin, that you can't shake, that nobody seems to be as interested in as you are. Tell us about that. How did that part of the story come about?
Well, Louise, I know you're speaking from personal experience because I've read your fabulous book about the poor people who've been trafficked into this country and the lives that they have, and the work that you have done on that is absolutely astounding. What's the name of that book again? I'm not allowed to say anymore because I'm a BBC stuff. No, Louise Hulland has done the most amazing book on trafficked people and done some brilliant journalism on it. So I know what it's like when a story gets under your skin, and you know what it's like. Yeah. This story got under my skin, but no broadcast editor was going to pay for me to sit in a high court over a lengthy trial reporting every single day. There just isn't that kind of money in journalism anymore. So, but I knew there were enough people who were interested in the story who might be tempted to put their hands in their pockets. And I basically worked out what I could live on at a modest loss for a month that the first trial was going on, which was £3,000, without telling my wife. And I set a crowdfund. I won't be able to pay the mortgage this month, darling. And I set a crowdfunder target of £3,000. But within 2 weeks, I doubled that amount of money. So I was able to then start planning to cover the rest of the litigation. And I started getting this front row seat to this extraordinary drama playing out at the High Court. And these documents that were surfacing every single day, which had damning information about it, I was able to get my hands on and start reporting. So it was a phenomenal process and a real privilege to be able to do. But it was, this story has become what it has become because of those sub-postmasters, because of those innocent people who fought doggedly to clear their names in the face of attritional, institutional indifference and aggression. And I was just provided a front row seat by the generosity of others. And it has been the greatest privilege of my career to be able to follow this story to where we are today. And it's been an extraordinary thing for you as well to see it. At any point were you thinking, this is never going to see the light of day? Why is, because this last week alone, we've seen 5 Live specials on it. We've seen BBC Breakfast specials on it. Everyone's interested now. There must have been times when you just wanted to bang your head against the wall. Yeah, there were a couple of times, I think around 2013, 14, I couldn't get arrested with this story, and 2011 actually as well. And I thought, this is up to 8 or 9 people may have been sent to prison, and they're all claiming they're innocent. This could be a huge miscarriage of justice story. I mean, we only found out it was in the hundreds in 2020, and people just didn't seem to understand. It didn't seem to take. They just busy newsroom. Maybe I was talking to the wrong people. Maybe I had the wrong contacts. It just wasn't cutting through, and no one was interested. And then we eventually worked it up into a reasonable head of steam at the BBC, culminating in a panorama in 2015. The panorama went out, and nothing happened. It was as if it just went silent again, and there was no take up from the broadsheet newspapers at all, and the politicians as well. And so I thought, I'll write a book then. So I started chugging away at the book, and then this High Court case came up and got Alan Bates and his amazing sub-postmasters eventually cut through. They cut through the public consciousness, and they never gave up.
Nick, as I said at the beginning, I'm really proud of you. What happens next? Because we know there's been lots of talk this week about Rishi Sunak saying, they're going to be exonerated and names will be cleared by the end of the year. What do you think this year will look like for these poor sub-postmasters?
It will be a roller coaster ride, and I know that a lot of sub-postmasters are exhausted, they're traumatised, they just want to put this behind them, but this story, certainly in this election year, is not going to go away, and it's going to be hard for them, and I hope that they get the results that they deserve. It looks like the government has realised that if it does not handle this correctly, it could potentially be a vote loser come the next election. So I think there's a determination. The minds of the politicians are focused. The fallout is going to be phenomenal as the public inquiry progresses towards its end, which should be by the end of this year, with a report next year. So this is going to be a year for this story hitting lots of high notes. We're going to see senior executives in the witness box giving evidence, and there will just be huge amounts of attention on it. And I think that's only a good thing, because this is the biggest miscarriage of justice in this country. Oh, by the way, before you get rid of me, your book is called Stolen Lives. It's
Nicholas.
Superb. Everyone should go and buy it. If you can't say that, I can. It's brilliant.
Thank you very much. Very kind of you. I'm guessing there might be follow-up for your book as well on the post office scandal. In terms of a lighter note to end this interview on, because I know it's been such a big story for you, do you have Toby Jones's mobile phone number now?
Do you know what? I've never met him. I stayed well away from the casting of it. No, I had a minuscule role in this drama, and it was just doing what I do in my comfort zone, which is analysing facts and helping turn those into something that can make coherent sense for other people to then go and do brilliant things with. So yeah, I'm not choosing curtains or going bowling with Toby Jones, I'm afraid.
Well, they're two odd things to pick, but you have missed a trick there, my friend. Maybe next time. Nick Wallis, thank you so much for coming on the afternoon show, and well done. It's been a privilege to watch you do this work. Thank you so much to Nick Wallis. And of course, there's so many places on BBC Sounds that you can listen to Nick's podcast. There's a couple of File on 4s on this programme. There's the Panorama that I think is still knocking around iPlayer. And of course, it's still going to be in the news for weeks to come.